Guys, on today's installment of PJ Cooks Sexy Food, we're going to make the most classic of French dishes, coq au vin. So let's get started. So to start, the ingredients we're going to need for our coq au vin is we're going to need 3 pounds of chicken parts, 6 ounces of salt pork. If you can't get salt pork, use a good thick smoked bacon. We have half a cup of flour and 2 tablespoons of water. We also have 10 ounces of pearl onions. If you can't find them in the produce department, you could find them in the freezer. We have 10 ounces of cremini mushrooms. If you can't find creminis, you could use white button. We have 1 large onion, quartered, 2 ribs of celery, quartered, 2 carrots, quartered, 3 cloves of garlic that have been crushed. We have 8 sprigs of fresh thyme, 2 bay leaves. We are also going to need 2 cups of chicken stock, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/4 cup of cognac or brandy, and 6 cups of red wine. I'm using a Burgundy today, but you could use a Beaujolais, a Pinot Noir, any type of light red wine that is suitable for drinking. So to begin, in a large Dutch oven, we are going to add in our aromatics, which is our onions, our thyme, our celery, carrots, garlic, and bay leaves. I'm just going to mix those up in the bottom of the pot. And we're going to now set this off to the side. In a large skillet, we're going to put in the 2 tablespoons of water and the 6 ounces of salt pork. We're going to put that over a medium-low heat covered for the fat to start to render from the pork. While the salt pork is rendering, we're going to take our chicken parts and we're going to sprinkle them with salt and pepper. Ensure to get them on both sides. Now that our chicken is nice and coated in salt and pepper, next we want to dredge it in flour and lightly coat the chicken. Shake off any excess, and we're going to set it on a wire rack, and we're going to let that sit while our pork is still rendering. So as you can see, the water is evaporated and the pork is starting to render some of its fat. Now we're going to keep this on a medium heat uncovered, and we're going to cook this up just until it starts to get crisp. So as you can see, our salt pork has gotten nice and brown and crispy. So now we're going to take it out of the pot and we're going to reserve it in a bowl on the side. And I'm going to go ahead and take care of that right now. So I went ahead and I removed the salt pork, and as you can see, it gave us a good amount of fat on the bottom of the pan. We need that fat right now because now what we want to do is we want to introduce our chicken parts. We don't want to put too many in the pan at once. We don't want to overcrowd it. We want the pieces to brown nicely. So I'm going to do 3, maybe 4 pieces at a time. And we're going to get these until they're nice and golden brown on each side. It's going to take a couple of minutes. So it's been a couple of minutes on the first side. Now it's time to take a peek. So you see how nice and golden brown that's getting? That's exactly what we're looking for. We're going to go ahead and flip our chicken pieces over and let it brown on the other side for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go and... So as you can see, the last of our chicken is nice and golden brown, so I'm going to go ahead and put that with the rest of the chicken in the pot with the vegetables. Now, in this same skillet that we've been working in, I'm going to add the pearl onions. And we're just going to cook those around for a couple of minutes until they get nice and golden brown on the outside. So as you can see, our onions have gotten nice and golden. Now we're going to remove the onions from the pan. And we're going to put them in the same bowl that we have with our reserved crispy salt pork. Once we remove all the onions from the pan, you can see how much fat we have at the bottom. We want to have a couple of tablespoons. Looks like we have a good amount left from what the chicken rendered off and what the salt pork throughout. So we're not going to use those 2 tablespoons of butter that we had earlier. But if you don't have enough fat in the bottom of the pan right now at this point, this is the time that you would add those 2 tablespoons of butter. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce the mushrooms. And we want to cook these until they get nice and brown. Don't move them around, just let them cook in the hot fat to get nice and golden brown on one side. So as you can see, the mushrooms are just starting to brown right around the edges like this. Now we want to go ahead and just give them a good stir. We just want to soften them now so we have that little bit of brown on the mushrooms. This should only be for about another minute or so. Okay, so it's been another minute. You can see how the mushrooms have started to soften. Now we want to go ahead and remove those from the pan. And we're going to reserve those with the onions and the salt pork. Once I have all these out of the pan, you see all those beautiful brown bits on the bottom of the pan. That is what in French cuisine is called the fond. This is where all the flavor is. We want to get that fond up. So in order to do so, we need to deglaze the pan. So we're going to turn the heat up to high right now. And we're going to grab a wooden spoon. Once everything starts to bubble as it is, we're going to start by adding in the cognac that we reserved earlier, or the brandy. And we're going to start scraping up all those brown bits at the bottom of the pan. You want to get all that flavor in. Now this may evaporate pretty quickly. If it does, don't worry. Once you get most of the bits up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to introduce 1 cup of the red wine. I have most of the I'm scraping, making sure to get every bit up. Oh, it smells like heaven in this kitchen today, I have to tell you that much. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of the red wine. I'm going to continue scraping the bottom. And I believe I may have left this off the ingredients list earlier. What we need to do is we need to add in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. We're going to cook that in with the red wine for just a few moments and still scrape up all those bits. And we're going to keep stirring and scraping until the tomato paste is dissolved and we don't feel anything left on the bottom of the pan. So what I've done is I brought that pot that we had with our chicken and our vegetables over. I then poured in the wine that we had with the brandy or cognac and the tomato paste. I poured that in. I added in the 2 cups of chicken stock and the remaining 5 cups of red wine. I'm just going to make sure that our chicken is well submerged within the wine. Give it a little poke here and there, make sure it's covered. Going to put the lid on the pot. Going to let this cool down for a little bit. And then we're going to put it in the refrigerator for a minimum of 6 hours. Overnight is best. And then we will continue on. As for the reserved mushrooms, the salt pork, and the onions, I'm going to put those in a little container and put those in the refrigerator as well. Okay, so I went ahead and I preheated our oven to 325 degrees, and now I've taken out our chicken that's been in the refrigerator overnight, and you can see how it's nice and rich looking. Now we're going to put this into the oven for a minimum of 2 hours to up to 2.5 till the chicken becomes nice and tender. So our chicken has been in the oven for about 2.5 hours. You can see how beautifully dark and brown this has gotten. Our chicken is nice and fork tender. So what we want to do is we want to remove the chicken from the pot. Because it is so tender, we want to be gentle with it. I'm going in with the slotted spoon. And I'm going to put it into a oven safe dish because we're going to return this into the oven just to keep the chicken warm while we finish the sauce. I'm going to put a lid on this and pop this in the oven. The oven is off, but it's still hot, so this is going to keep it nice and warm while we finish the sauce. The first thing we're going to do to complete our sauce is we're going to strain out all the beautiful braising liquid that we have in our pot. And we're going to strain out all those vegetables from it. At this point, I'm going to now toss in 1 more sprig of fresh thyme. I'm going to put this on a medium burner. I'm going to reduce this by 1/3, and we should be left with this luscious, velvety sauce. So as you can see, our sauce is reduced by 1/3. It is very rich, and it's starting to slightly coat a spoon, but it's still a little thinner than I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm going to mix it with 1 teaspoon of flour. I'm going to mix those two together gently with a fork. till combined, and then I'm going to introduce this into our sauce over medium heat, and we're going to continue to cook that just a little bit, just for it to come together. And then we should have a nice thick velvety sauce. So I added the flour and butter that make sure that we combine, and you can see how much richer and thicker this looks. Now we're going to fish out that sprig of thyme. Discard that thyme and give it up all its flavor. Now it's time to introduce all those vegetables and salt pork that we cooked off yesterday that we had reserved in the refrigerator. That's the salt pork, the onions, the mushrooms. Going to add that into the sauce, and we're going to return this to a heat until it comes up to a nice simmer again. So our vegetables have been heating up in our sauce. Now let's give it a taste, see if it needs any salt or pepper. Ooh, that is almost perfect. Could use a tiny pinch of salt. And maybe 2 grinds of pepper. All right, 3 grinds of pepper. Stir that in. Okay, beautiful. Now we will set this off to the side and we shall plate. So for plating our coq au vin, I'm going to start off by putting some egg noodles on the bottom of the plate. You could serve this with roasted potatoes, you could serve this with mashed potatoes, with rice, with anything you like, but I like buttered egg noodles. In this case, I'm actually using a buttered spätzle type noodle. On top of that, let's put 2 or 3 pieces of our chicken. We'll go with a nice thigh and one of those beautifully cooked legs. Oh, doesn't that look good? Now we will top it with our sauce, with our mushrooms, our pearl onions, the salt pork. Oh yes, baby, that looks good. Let's wipe the edges of our plate to make it look clean and pretty. And give it a little bit of fresh parsley around the edge of the plate. And maybe a nice sprig of thyme right in the middle. So there you go, folks. Coq au vin. Classic French dish. May take some time, but when you eat this, it's definitely worth it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you try this recipe at home.